Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the world of watercolor with Willow Wolfe. What I want to begin with is just a brief introduction to the supplies that will get you the results that you're looking to achieve. So the first thing that we've done is we have taken that amazing Sizzix Studio registration press tool and starter set, and we have created a composition using ink, which is an archival acid-free ink, and one of the beautiful stamps that comes in that set. So you can take that stamp and lay out any composition that you want, and you end up with a gorgeous finished kind of illustration on watercolor paper. This is Willow Wolfe hot press watercolor paper. It's beautifully smooth and buttery. It blends absolutely perfectly, and it gives you time to play with your paint. So it is really important that you're using watercolor paper. A lot of people are familiar with cold press. Cold press has a lot more texture and grooves. This is hot press. It's really, really, really smooth, which is great for making sure that that ink design goes on beautifully. I have just kind of some household items that I use every day. One is a clipboard. The other is a lazy Susan. I call this a pro tip because it's just a great, inexpensive way to be able to turn your project while you're working, and it keeps it elevated and off the palette. Now let's talk a little bit about some basics here that we're going to use. The other tool that we have in front of us, which is probably one of my favorite things, is the Willow Wolfe and Sizzix Media Mat. So this is portable. If you needed to roll it up and travel with it, you could do that. It's got 12 deeper wells, and by deeper I mean it holds enough paint that you can squeeze in here that it's going to last you a really, really long time. Sometimes when I work with these, I also have these on a clipboard so that I can just pick it up and travel around the room with it and move wherever I want to go. You have a little spot here. Now, sometimes I use this for a sponge. Sometimes I use it just to hold a little bit of water. Just depends on what you're working on at the time. The great thing about the media mat is that you can use it for all media. That means oil, acrylic, watercolor, ink. It is perfect for everything. It is also fantastic for holding your brushes. So you're going to be able to set your brushes in the media mat so that they're nice and stationary and they don't roll around the table on you. And of course, we've got beautiful quality watercolor paint. And we're going to start with what we call a split primary palette. All that means is that you've got two of each main color. So let's move these up here so that you can see them. You've got two yellows, two reds, and two blues. With that primary palette, you can mix absolutely anything in the world. And then I have what I call convenience colors. And these are often a green, a different kind of yellow, like a yellow ochre, which I love, burnt umber or burnt sienna. Kind of up to you what your favorite convenience colors are, but you can make a lot of different things with these 6 right here. Let's talk about how we get those colors into the media mat in a minute, but first we're going to talk brushes. This is your Amavi set. This set is going to give you 4 beautiful round brushes that are going to be great for all the techniques that you're going to learn. We're going to open this set up, and you can either save the packaging or the card to travel with, or you can just take them right out and discard it if you want. I like to save these because I'll often put my brushes in them to travel. A little tip for you is that when you get brushes for the first time, they often have little caps on them. We're going to take those off. Do not put the cap back on. Quite often, and I know everybody wants to keep their rounds nice and round, when you try to put that cap on, you'll snag a hair and it will damage the brush. So just discard the caps. Amavi is made with a really beautiful golden Taklon blend. It's pure synthetic. What that means is there's no natural animal hair in these brushes, so they're 100% cruelty free. But they're a beautiful blend of synthetic filaments that hold lots of paint and water and still carry a nice fine point for us to be able to do detail work. So let's talk about how to use these supplies and how to get ready to use these supplies. So let's talk a little bit about putting our paint out onto our palette. The beauty of watercolor is that even when it dries on the palette like this, and this media mat is what I often call a palette, it's going to be able to be reactivated. So don't worry about wasting paint, because once it dries, you can just put a little bit of water back in it and you're good to go. So, sorry, I lost track. There's my white, lemon yellow, cad yellow hue. So this is a cool yellow, a much lighter looking yellow, and this is a warm yellow. We're going to go permanent rose, And we're going to go Cad Red Pale. So again, two reds. One that's kind of leans more towards the sun, which is very warm, and one that's a little bit more blue looking. That's called your full red. Let's go with ultramarine blue and cerulean. Now, you don't have to have all the same colors that I do. You can absolutely pick whatever colors you have in front of you and get started. So I'm going to make sure that I have here just some extra convenience colors for today. I may not use them all, but I need to get this palette set up anyway. We're going to go yellow ochre, burnt umber, and sap green. Sap green is my favorite green. I use it on almost everything. So it's a must-have convenience color for me. We also have in front of us some paper towel. So the paper towel is fantastic for blotting our brush, which we're going to do a lot of today. Now, how to get your brushes ready. When you first get a new brush, it has what's called sizing in it. That makes it feel very, very stiff. And the first thing we're going to do is just dampen the brush in the water. And then with our fingers, we're just going to gently clean out that sizing. I've got paint on my hands already. And then once it's completely broken in a little bit here, we're going to just make sure we rinse all the sizing out of that brush before we get started. Sizing is like a sugar water or a starch that holds the brush in shape during shipping. And these have a great snap and spring to them. That means that it's going to hold its shape and a nice fine point. They're called Amavi. All right, now I'm going to set my brushes on my palette. I like to go in order from largest to smallest, and it holds them beautifully in shape. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll get a little scrap piece of watercolor paper, and we're just going to take one of these little scrap pieces here, and you can see I've played around with it here a little bit just to practice. And I can take this out for now, actually. And let's just start with this little swatch here. So the first thing I do when I wet the brush is I make sure I take out any excess water on the side of the container. And we're going to grab a little bit of color. And the beauty of this media mat is we're just going to bring it down here. And we're going to add water to it. The more water you add, the more transparent the color will be. So if I have straight paint with almost no water in it, it's going to be very, very dark. Now, before I even get to the watercolor paper, I'm going to just tap that brush off on paper towel. And you can see we have a nice even color of green. If you see it pooling, you can just tap it off again. Paint yourself a little swatch. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, if I have more water in it, it's going to be lighter. So the more water, the lighter the color. And often in watercolor, your highlight color is actually the background showing or peeking through. So for a few basic techniques, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to blend watercolor today. And it's probably my favorite. It's called wet on dry blending. And if you're at home today, it's great to just kind of get a swatch piece out, swatch all your colors, move them around a little bit, figure out your consistencies and how much water you need to create a certain effect or how little, and just play around a little bit. So let's talk about wet on dry. And we're going to do that with pink. So I've rinsed the brush, taken out the excess. I'm going to grab a little bit of this permanent rose color. I'm going to add some water to it. Sometimes with the media mat, when you first get it, and this is a brand new one fresh out of the box, you'll see a little bit of beading in your watercolor. As the media mat gets used, that doesn't happen the same way. So once I get this mixed, I'm going to just blot the brush. And by mixed, I mean mixed with water. And let's apply some here. Again, I have beading happening, which is okay. Sometimes I want that effect. And then I'm going to rinse the brush, blot, and we're going to move that color over. into nothing. So what we've done is blend this line where this darker color and this lighter color meet. That's called wet on dry blending. So I'm just going to show you that again. Just going to make we'll go this way this time. Going to make a little bit of a starting point here. If I've got too much beading happening, I can kind of tap the brush off again. Tap, blot, where this line meets with nothing beside it, we're going to start to move it into the background and create this beautiful gradation of color from dark to light. So imagine in a flower petal, your dark might be at the base of the petal and it's just smoothly gradiating into light color. That is called wet on dry blending, and it's one of my favorite techniques. We're going to show you a different technique. So I'm going to grab a different swatch. You can see here I've been playing with blends on this one too, and we're going to learn wet on wet blending. For wet on wet blending, it's a similar principle. The difference is we wet the surface before we blend. So I'm going to just take a little bit of water and I'm going to wet an area on this swatch. Now the key with this, it's really hard to see on camera sometimes. I'm not sure, I'm going to just kind of move it around, is that it's damp, but there's no big blobs of water coming off the surface there. Just think I didn't actually get enough water on there. Let's add a little bit more. Then we're going to take this pink color and we're going to start at the top, tap it off a little. Keep tapping, and we're going to work it into the wet background until it disappears into nothingness. So you have again this beautiful gradation of dark to light color. Let's do it a different way here. Make sure I have some pink mixed with some water. I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm going to go this way this time, and we're going to wet the surface. So sometimes with wet on wet, what you get is a softer blend because it's kind of merging as it goes already. But it also does a little bit more of kind of whatever it wants, which is pretty in itself. So we're going to start here. See that pooling there, which sometimes I love, sometimes I want to get rid of it. Wipe off the brush and continue moving in the other direction. Just going to rinse the brush. I've got a lot of pink in it and blend it in a little bit there. So wet on wet blending is a great way to kind of have really soft values merge and work beautifully into the background. You can use either or in watercolor, and they're not the only two techniques, but they're two of the major techniques that we use all the time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to paint using wet on wet and wet on dry techniques, this lovely little set of blossoms and butterflies. And we're going to begin with our pink values and the wet on dry painting technique. I'm using a number 6 Amavi round. And I'm just going to blot that and grab a little bit of pink. Blot again. And let's start at this bottom flower. Put a little bit of pink, rinse, blot. And I'm just going to blend that in. If I want, while it's still wet, I can just come in and this is a little bit of wet on wet at the same time and add a little bit of darker color on that. And I've already got the pink in the blossom. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that pink color. And you'll notice I'm really just using the tip of the brush. We're going to just do a few at a time. Rinse, blot. Now, if you get a big glob of paint like that, just quickly blot and work it in. So you can see it's much more forgiving than one might think. Start the next one. So let's go to the base of the bellflower, kind of around the leaf. So when we think about this, we almost kind of think about how those little tiny green sections are covering over the pink a little bit. And so we have a little bit of shadow there. And to control color and water ratio, how much color and water is in your brush, we're always tapping that brush off. And you'll notice that sometimes I pull the strokes towards the base of the flower there. If you've never painted with watercolor before, it can sometimes, when you see people doing it, seem a little bit intimidating. But once you learn a few basic techniques, it's actually quite freeing and fun and relaxing. Now, I got a little too much water on that one. I like the way it ended up, so we don't fuss about it. We just kind of let it go. Oh, forgot to tap. And sometimes we kind of teach you the rule of thumb for things and then break the rule a little bit because we forget or because we want a slightly different effect outside of the petal edges. Just do a few at a time. The reason for that is because if we don't, it starts to dry. Some of you are going to be heavier contrast painters, meaning you like brighter color or more contrast in your work. That's okay too. I'm a softer painter. My daughter, for example, paints with a lot more contrast than I do, and both are right. You'll notice that when I pull this color up, I'm kind of pulling it in the direction I imagine that the flower petals would grow, so that if it does start to dry, it actually just looks like I intended it to be done like that. And on this one, I'm going to put a little bit on the top. One of the reasons I really, really like wet on dry techniques is because you really get control over where the color goes. I got a little bit of a harsh line there. If it's not completely dry, I can probably still come in and soften that right in. Now this little underside here might be fully pink because it's covered up by a lot of different things. So we might just want to base that in there. And then there's not really much more to the bell. So we'll just get a couple of these in. Rinse, blot. And I miss these edges here. Sometimes I just forget to do things. So let's get this on. Now this is layer number 1. If you want to deepen or brighten the color, we can always add another couple of layers on top of that. Now with leaves, we're going to use the sap green. And we're going to start at the base of the leaf, pulling some of that dark if it pools into the bottom. Wipe the brush, and we're just going to bring that color up. So that gives us the appearance of a shadow with a lighter value on top there. This one I'm going to rinse because I feel like I got a lot of color on there, and just work that color forward. This one might be darker because it's sitting in the back. And then these little ones, sometimes I don't even really worry too much about dark or light on this first layer. I'll just get color in there. If I was left-handed, you're going to be working from the opposite side. You may want to start with the flowers over here and work towards this way. As a right-handed person, I'm probably going to start with the flowers on the left and work towards the right. But either way, if I need a better angle, I just turn the project so that I have a better angle. Now, back in here, it's not the base of the leaf, but I might have a little bit of a shadow. because it's coming underneath that flower. Wipe, and we'll just blend that in. And then at the base, I may also have a little bit of a shadow, so may only be left with a little bit of lighter color. And I've just rinsed the brush. I'm actually just going to kind of pull this through a little bit to make sure it blends. Again, I missed some little leaves down here. If I didn't, then they were very, very light. So at this point, this is just called base coating, which is just a solid coat over something. It's an undercoat or a base coat, we call it. And our little stem, we have a great first layer on this part of the painting, and we're going to do a little bit of wet on wet. So I'm going to take some water and I'm going to wet the top half of the butterfly's wing. And I want lemon yellow first. So I'm going to put that at the base, wipe the brush, kind of allow it to travel up a little bit. Just going to wet the bottom of the butterfly. I do them separately because if it starts to dry, it doesn't blend properly. And get some color there. Now, while it's still a little bit wet, I can take a bit of this yellow ochre. I'm going to drop a bit of that color here. And if it started to dry, it may not move up as much as I want, so then I can just kind of move that color around a bit. Not worried about whether it's perfect or it's shading exactly the way that I want. We're going to do our other little butterfly. Oops, water first. And you could do this wet on dry as well. A little bit of yellow. And we have a back wing here. And with the butterfly, the back wings might be a little bit darker than the front. So I'm going to bring this color up a little bit higher. I'm going to take that yellow ochre. And get it at the base. Right, we're going to return back to our flowers. I'm going to start with a little bit of lemon yellow. It's going to get it at the bottom here. Rinse. I'm going to work that color up a little bit. And I'm okay if it hits some of that pink. I think that's kind of pretty. While that's wet, I might want to take a bit of this really pretty kind of cad yellow. Put some dots of that. Get some in the base, back to that lemon yellow. Now, if I got it too much color in there, I could dab that out, but I'm actually just going to work it up so it hits the pink because I find that a really pretty combination. Rinse, blot, I'm going to work that up. So when we're painting or creating, we want to try to tie multiple elements in together. So I have yellow here. I want to have some of the same kind of warmth of yellows in other areas of the painting. Just blend some of that in. Let's talk a little bit about how to apply another layer on top and one of the guidelines that we use. This is called stacking. So let's say we have our first layer of green here and we want a shadow that's darker than that. I want to make sure that when I add that shadow, I don't cover the whole area. So I'm going to go with the next value in a smaller area than the first and blend that in. That way I see all the layers of color underneath. We call that stacking. So let's stack some additional color on these leaves. So in this little one here, I would come in and add just a little bit of color at the base. Here I'm just going to add some little touches of dark, basically just kind of putting dots there. And what that's going to do is give me additional depth and dimension. I might have had a shadow under here because it's being partially covered. And it's kind of just disappearing as I go, so I'm not even really blending it because it's such a small amount of color. I want to get some little bits and bobs here. Here I might want to make sure I have a distinct shadow. So I had the first layer and I'm just going to blend in a little bit of a shadow. So what you can see here is the more you layer, the more depth and dimension your artwork is going to have. And that's with anything that we do, whether it's paper arts or clay. The more you kind of build, the more depth and dimension you're going to see. So just kind of adding a little touch of darker green at the base of some of these. Okay, now let's stack a little bit more color on our flowers. So we'll take some more of that pink. I missed a spot here. Just going to pick a few spots, wipe the brush, and soften that in. Oh, it's getting a little out of control on me there. Now, I was trying to keep it tightly controlled at the bottom and it kind of ran away from me. So I'm going to take some clean water and pull it back in. Now you see the difference between this and this. That additional layer gives you so much more depth and dimension that it's fantastic. So let's get this on here. And maybe I just want to pick a little spot. Maybe I don't want to do all three. So this way of kind of varying what you have is a really great way to add interest. I feel like this one kind of didn't get enough to begin with, so we may have to do a couple additional layers. Blending it in. I want to add a little bit of yellow to the edges of my butterfly wings so that what ends up happening, this is wet on dry, not wet on wet. You could do either one. And I'm going to bring that back towards the inside. So what this does is make it look like the lightest part of the butterfly is kind of on the upper wing here. And while I'm in there, I just feel like I could use a little bit more bright yellow. One more step is we're going to take a little bit of an orangey or red. I'm just going to add some little touches of darker color in the base here. Just to make it come to life a little bit. Something that I love to do is to make sure that I build some additional color into the background. So sometimes I'll come in and I'll add a little color, then rinse the brush, and in a circular motion, we're going to soften that in. Let me show you that again. Oops, too much water. And come around the leaf and the flower. You'd want to wait till your design is dry. Rinse the brush. just looks like almost like there's little bits of foliage and leaves in the background peeking through. Also, if you end up going outside the lines, you never have to worry because you can come in with this technique and just kind of embellish and add. Too much again, that's fine. And here's what I love to do. I'm going to grab a little bit of pink. We're going to bring some of that color in. I want to just show you some, they're all half finished pretty much, but some ideas of kind of some variations of composition. So here's what we laid out this morning. Here's another one where we've got the design on with different elements and different areas, just to kind of make a whole journal page that we might want to work with. And here's one where we've used violet tones and we're still kind of playing around with the color scheme in the composition as opposed to pink. So when you look at something like this, which is a combination of stencils, we've got your background stencil here, we've got some rub-ons, we've got a little bit of acrylic on top. We've really done a full mixed media exploration in this one. This is one of the background stencils from the starter kit. This is, of course, the stamp from the starter kit. And you can really play with different color and different elements in that composition there. So I hope you enjoyed today. You're always welcome to email me directly if you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like guidance in any way. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely, wonderful day.